Welcome to my channel.
And this is English Podcast Station.
We are about to plunge into this stack of sources you've shared with us. And they're all centered around, well, honestly, what might seem like a pretty basic topic at first glance. English weather vocabulary.
That's right. And what you've given us here, it's a collection of, articles, guides, bits of material. And they make a really strong case for why something as seemingly simple as talking about the weather is, highlighted as fundamentally important for beginner English learners.
Right. So our mission in this deep dive is to pull out those essential nuggets, the core concepts, the key vocabulary, and really the why behind it all. Why is weather talk presented as such a powerful starting point for someone just beginning their journey with English?
Well, it's fascinating because the sources, they consistently position discussing the weather, not just as, boring small talk, but actually as a strategic foundational tool. They describe it again and again as perfect for English beginners.
Okay, perfect. That's a bold claim. Let's unpack that a bit. Why do these sources see it that way? Why perfect?
Well, okay. One key point they make is that it's a simple, common, and very useful way to start a conversation. Think about it. Weather is something everyone experiences, right?
Yeah.
Everywhere. It's a universal thing.
And crucially, they highlight that it's a safe, friendly topic that is not too personal. That's a big one. You're not immediately diving into really complex or sensitive stuff. That psychological safety, that's incredibly important, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. For someone who might be a bit shy or nervous about speaking a new language, the sources emphasize that this makes weather talk just ideal for breaking the ice when you're meeting new people. It gives you an easy, sort of low-pressure way in to actually start using the language without feeling totally overwhelmed.
Ah, okay. So the goal isn't just about memorizing words for rain or sun, but as the sources point out, it's about helping learners talk about the weather confidently. It's about building that initial conversational muscle. Yeah.
Exactly. It provides this context that's just readily available for practice. And practice, as the sources will reinforce later on, is really the key to getting better.
Makes sense. And to build that muscle, you obviously need the right tools. The sources give us a really clear kind of essential kit of weather vocabulary.
These are the fundamental building blocks, the terms you really need to describe what's happening outside your window or even halfway across the world.
Okay, let's look at some of the key ones and how the sources define them. We've got the sky conditions. First up, sunny.
Right. The sources tell us this is when the sun is shining, the sky is clear, and it's bright outside. Pretty straightforward, that one.
Okay. And the opposite, cloudy.
That means the sky is full of clouds, and it makes it difficult to see the sun. Just a simple contrast there.
And something that often comes with clouds, rainy.
Yes, simply it's raining. And the sources add that practical note, implying a need for an umbrella.
Okay, a useful implication. Then there's windy.
This is when the wind is blowing strongly. The sources even add that relatable detail, potentially causing hair to fly everywhere.
Oh, yeah. We've all been there. If you're in a colder climate, you might get snowy.
That's when snow is falling, making everything look white. Really transforms the landscape, doesn't it?
It does. And maybe combining a few of those. Stormy.
Yeah, stormy describes more intense conditions. We're talking heavy rain, strong wind, and possibly thunder and lightning. It kind of covers that whole package of rough weather.
Okay, so beyond what's falling or blowing, there's temperature. The extremes. Hot.
Hot is defined as a high temperature that might cause one to sweat a lot. Very descriptive.
And cold.
Cold means a low temperature, and it requires a jacket or coat. Clear action needed there.
Right. The sources also include those sort of in-between temperatures. Cool.
Cool is described as being between hot and cold. Specifically, feeling a little cold that's still comfortable. That's a nice nuance, actually.
And warm.
Warm is a little hot but nice, and importantly, not necessarily requiring a jacket.
Uh-huh.
So slightly warmer than cool, but definitely not full-on hot.
That list gives you a really solid foundation, doesn't it? Enough to describe most common weather scenarios. But the sources don't just start there. They quickly move from those single words to how you actually use them in a conversation.
Yeah, this is where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, putting the words into practice. The sources highlight the common questions learners are taught to ask.
Like the most classic one, what's the weather like today? Everyone knows that one.
Right. And more direct questions, too, linked to current conditions, like, is it raining? Or maybe, is it sunny outside?
And because weather impacts your plans, a really practical question is, do I need an umbrella?
Or if you want specifics about how hot or cold it is, you ask, what's the temperature?
Right. And the sources give us the standard ways to answer these questions, often using really simple sentence structures.
Exactly. Simple phrases like, it's sunny today or it's raining right now.
Yeah.
Very direct.
Or describing the temperature, it's very cold outside.
They also include those more general descriptions you might hear like, the weather is nice or it's a beautiful day, things like that.
And specific observations that use that core vocabulary we just covered, the sky is clear or there's a lot of wind.
And this whole question and answer structure, it's just brilliant for beginners because, as the sources show, it provides immediate, repeatable practice. You know, opportunities for basic conversational flow. You ask, you get an answer, maybe you respond. It gets things moving.
Mm-hmm. And thinking bigger than just today's weather, the sources also expand our view a bit to how weather changes over time and across different places.
Yeah, they outline the typical weather you might expect in each season. Gives you a broader picture.
Starting with spring, what's it usually like, according to these sources?
Typically warm and rainy. They mentioned this is when, flowers start to grow, giving that sense of everything feeling fresh and green.
Nice detail. Okay, moving into summer.
That's the season that's usually hot and sunny.
Yeah.
And the sources link this to common activities like people going to the beach or have picnics or just saying they're loving the beach.
Ah, the season of outdoor fun. Got it. And autumn, or well, fall.
This is when things become cool and windy. Visually, it's associated with leaves that change color and fall from trees. That classic image.
That classic autumn scene.
Yeah.
Right. Finally, winter.
Winter is generally described as cold or snowy in many places, which obviously means people need to wear heavy coats, bundling up.
Yeah. The sources also drop in these brief notes about how weather varies dramatically depending on where you are in the world, which is, a great reminder that weather isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of topic.
Exactly. They give examples like Canada having famously very cold and snowy winters,
Yeah.
or England being known for its frequent rain and cloudy skies. And then tropical countries, say Thailand or Indonesia, experiencing hot and humid conditions. It shows how this vocabulary is applicable everywhere, really, but the specifics obviously differ.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting, I think. It moves beyond just description. The sources introduce common weather-related idioms. This is the fun part.
Oh yeah, idioms add so much flavor, don't they? And deeper meaning. They often don't mean what they literally say. The first one the sources mentioned is pretty famous. It's raining cats and dogs.
Which sounds absolutely wild, but yeah, the sources clarify this simply means it's raining very hard. Thankfully, no actual animals involved.
Right. Another common one is under the weather.
And this one is such a perfect example of an idiom not meaning what you'd expect. The sources explicitly state it doesn't mean you're standing outside in bad weather. It means someone is sick or feeling unwell. It's purely metaphorical.
Exactly. A really common way to say you're feeling a bit off. And speaking of metaphors, there's a storm is coming.
Right. And while it can mean literal bad weather is on the way, the sources point out it's often used metaphorically to suggest that bad things happening, like, uh-oh, trouble is brewing.
Yeah, that sense of foreboding. And they even bring back one of the concepts we started with, the idiom break the ice.
Ah, right. We talked about using weather talk to do that. The sources define break the ice as meaning to start a conversation, and they connect it right back by noting this is often using small talk like discussing the weather. It ties the idiom directly to that practical function we discussed right at the start.
It really underscores how integrated weather is in everyday English conversation, doesn't it? Even in these figurative expressions.
Totally. And this whole discussion, all this vocabulary and these phrases, it isn't just theoretical, is it? The source is strongly connected to practical, real world application. They keep saying that weather affects what we wear and what we do.
And this provides immediate, really tangible examples for learners to grasp the relevance. So if it's hot, the sources suggest you probably wear shorts, drink cold water. Makes sense.
And if it's cold, you'd put on jackets, maybe drink hot tea.
Right. If it's raining, you might choose to stay inside, or at least remember to take an umbrella with you.
And if it's that pleasant, sunny, and warm weather we talked about earlier, the sources use the example that this makes it a perfect day for a walk or maybe going to the park.
These simple examples highlight a crucial practical takeaway that the sources really emphasize. It's important to check the weather before going outside. Hmm. So you can plan your clothing and your activities accordingly. Weather isn't just something you chat about, it directly influences your daily choices.
Which is exactly why practicing this vocabulary is so important. The sources make a really big point about practice being key.
They do. They suggest simple ways like practicing speaking with a friend or even just describing the weather you see outside your window, but in English. The classic saying, practice makes perfect, is mentioned, and that's really the principle behind mastering this. You just have to use it.
So, looking back at this whole deep dive, we've really seen how the sources present weather vocabulary not just as, a list of words, but as a strategic entry point for beginner English learners. It's quite clever, actually.
It is. It's a low stakes way to build confidence, to enable those first simple conversations. And it provides practical language that's directly connected to daily life and activities, things you actually do.
Yeah, we've covered the essential words, the key phrases for asking and answering, seen how weather varies by season and place. We've explored some fun idioms and tied it all back to why it matters for planning your day and, of course, the importance of practice.
It really is surprising how much depth and utility is packed into this seemingly simple topic, isn't it?
It really is. And maybe here's a final thought for you to consider, building on everything we've just pulled from these sources. Given how much the weather is probably influencing what you're wearing right now, or maybe what you might decide to do right after listening to this, perhaps the single most immediate and useful application of everything we've discussed is simply looking at your window right now and describing the weather where you are in English. Try it.